Welcome, fellow wine lovers. This is the Wine Ghost podcast. I'm Mate Bosch, a certified sommelier and seeker of hidden stories behind the most mysterious drink in history. For more information or direct contact, please look for the Wine Ghost on Instagram and Facebook. But now, please grab a glass, get comfortable, and listen to how the day's ghosts get out of the bottle. This week, you can hear Hungary's sommelier champion Victoria Evans, who joined me for an exciting conversation. Victoria changed her career from the Hungarian army to later become the head sommelier of the first ever Hungarian Michelin Star Restaurant, and then the first woman to become the sommelier champion of Hungary. Nowadays, she lives in Budapest and works as the executive head sommelier at Caviar&Bull Restaurants. Victoria shared some tips on how to prepare yourself for wine exams and improve your blind tasting skills. But you might also get a sobering explanation of why Hungary does not have any master of wine yet, and which Hungarian native varieties would have a future in export markets in the long run. You can also hear what kind of wines Victoria likes to drink at home, and which grand plans does she have for the future. So grab a glass and get inspired. So hi Victoria, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time.
Hi, Mate.
How are you
happy
today?
to be here. I'm very fine, but this quarantine time it's very difficult because except drinking wine, I do not have any duties these days. So it's a little bit like boring.
Oh, and so how do you use your time during the corona outbreak?
It's difficult due to the fact that I'm at home oh my gosh, for more than 3 weeks. So I try to accommodate this new situation. Basically, like each day, I still have a couple of hours of working because I'm not just responsible as an executive head sommelier for Caviar&Bull Budapest, but we have got 6 different restaurants in our group in Malta and in Budapest. So even though that the restaurants are closed, I have to take care of all the drink and beverage lists. So it takes a while to build up the new concept. Except this, of course, I'm doing some sport because the best sommeliers all over the world, they also take care about their physical health. It's also important. And now I do have the time to study Spanish after English, Russian, French, and Italian. So that's the situation now. But I cannot wait to finish with this period of our life.
And I also hear that you do online tastings, right? Or live tastings.
Yeah, well, yes. We have got a very widespread channel with the Hungarian sommeliers and with the Hungarian wine industry. We have got like online tastings each evening, like from 7 p.m. And I'm also invited in a couple of other online tastings with the Hungarian winemakers. And there is going to be so much more. But it's nice. It's nice to be the part of this community, but I would rather enjoy the wine tastings in a different way, as usual.
I'm sure. And what is your opinion about online tasting? Do you think are they going to stay after this Corona era, so to say?
If we are talking about the opportunity of the international online tastings, that for example we also do with some champagne houses, and for example we have had 2 days ago Villa Maria from New Zealand. The international part, it will stay definitely in the eyes of the sommelier society who is interested not just in Hungary, but in the whole world. But obviously, me and my colleagues, we prefer to do the tastings, not in an online version. So yes, it's nice. It's nice to spend some time with this, but we will go back to the normal tastings when this is over.
Hopefully soon, yes.
Yes.
And if I may just go back shortly to the beginnings, maybe, or to your beginnings. So how you started in the industry in the first place? I read in another article that you inherited maybe the love or appreciation of wine from your mother. Is that accurate?
Yeah, it's quite accurate. I was born in the United States, in California, so I was born very close to Napa Valley. And my mother, she is a very, very well educated wine taster. She's not a sommelier, however, she has got a very extended knowledge. So um, in my childhood, I had a different situation than most of the other people because I was tasting the best red wines from Australia, California, and even from Argentina. So I started wine tasting at a very early age. I think I was around like 12 or 13 years old, but it wasn't my plan to become a sommelier. I I did two university degree at the Hungarian um, National Defense University in security and defense politics. So I had I had something totally else in my mind. But after a while, when I have finished with my master degree, I have realized that to my personality, the Hungarian army doesn't really fit. So I started to work in a wine bar as a part-time job, just for fun, and it turned to be clear in some months that I was very good in blind tasting. So I started to build up a career in this field. And yeah, we can admit that I know everything about wines, spirits, and about weapons. That's the story, how everything has started. So basically my sommelier career, it has started 7 years ago, in 2013. And I'm also surprised, but I could have gained all the achievements in 7 years that I was expected from myself, or even more.
How was this transition for you? Like, did it take deep and long in the dialogues to make this decision to be or to become a sommelier? Or and what was your maybe reaction from your loved ones because you studied, you had a master degree, and then start a whole new career?
Yes, but I have to say, I never asked anybody about anything in my entire life, what I was doing. So basically, I haven't even said to my mother until I became kind of successful. And it wasn't a difficult decision because my fiance, he's in the Hungarian army. And I thought after a while that in one family, one military officer, it's more than enough. And the sommelier career is amazing regarding the fact that you have got flexible working hours, and it was so much better for our private life as well. And honestly, when I started, in a couple of months, I totally fell in love with all the wine tastings and with all the wine questions. So I never had the regretting feeling after this. So I loved the defense politics and everything, but I love the wines and the spirits like 100 times more. So I'm extremely happy with my decision.
And when after this transition, maybe did you also consider that the wine industry is still quite a male-dominated industry, or and why do you think it is, or did you consider it maybe as a hardship?
Well, it was extremely difficult in the first couple of years. So, first of all, I'm still very young to be a sommelier. I just turned to be 30 years old. So, when I started, I had two problems. First of all, I was a woman, and second of all, I was young. So back in time, in like 2013 or 2014, when I started to visit the wine tasting events and all stuff like this, all the people were a little bit like strange with me, and they didn't take me too serious. But it has changed a lot after like 4 or 5 years. So it was very difficult. The male sommelier society here in Hungary, they are not the nicest people and not the kindest people. So yes, it's absolutely male dominated. However, I have to mention that in Hungary, we have got plenty sommeliers who are women, who are extremely talented, but maybe the case is that they are more sensitive than me. So I didn't take their behavior too seriously. And after a while, when I started to reach different points, like when I made my WSET advanced course, when I won a blind tasting competition in Hungary, and when I became mainly the head sommelier of the first Michelin Star Restaurant of Hungary, of the Costas, 4 years ago, the things started to change. But basically, my situation, it turned to be so much better last year when I became the third at the Hungarian National Sommelier Championship. So after this, finally, the people started to stop calling me the female sommelier of Hungary, because this terminology doesn't really exist. So this is not weightlifting. I have to say it. So there is no difference between men and women. And last year, in December, I have also finished with my WSCT level 4, the diploma level in wines and spirits, which is a diploma that none of the Hungarian sommeliers carry here in Hungary. Of course, there are around like 35 people who has got the diploma, but from these people, nobody works on the floor as a sommelier, because here in Hungary, most of the people think that the sommelier job is only about recommending wines at the table and working on the floor. So the theoretical knowledge, it's a different story, but I thought it was very important, and it has also helped me to be successful at the national championship this year. So yes, we can admit that I have changed the Hungarian history a little bit, because this year in March I won the title of the Hungarian sommelier champion. So yes, now my situation it's quite good, and all the winemakers and all the sommeliers, they admit that I exist, and yes, now I'm on the same appreciation level as any other male sommelier or sommelier.
And congratulations for your recent title.
Thank you.
Can you also like paint a picture in our head about this competition in Hungary? Like how long was it? Which task did you have to master before that? How did you prepare yourself?
Yes, most of the people who are not in the sommelier industry, not just in our country, but I think all over the world, this is a fact that that most of the people think that a sommelier championship is only about blind tasting. No. So the blind tasting championship is about blind tasting, but the sommelier championship, it's so much more complex with all the tasks that you have to practice and that you have to do during the competition. So first of all, it starts with a semi-final where there is like a theoretical test about all the beverages from the whole world. So like you can start it from cigars to water questions, to cocktails, and of course to wines, but not just from the well-known wine countries. So we have to know everything about, like, from China to India. So the theoretical part is also difficult. And in the semi-final, after this, there is also a blind tasting with 3 wines. And after, there is a practical part, with recommending wines for different food, and even you have to decant a wine on the stage. But all these tasks are very precise and very detailed. So you have got like 5 minutes for the whole process, and you have to do everything step by step, because all the steps are written down previously and you have to practice. So it doesn't matter that if you are a professional, to do all the tasks and to get the maximum points, it's very difficult, and you have to practice a lot, because all the steps are following each other, and if you change anything, then the judges will not give you good points. So that's the semi-final. And on the next day, they announce that who is the best 3, and then you have to appear on the stage, and you have to do like 7 different tasks. There is also decanting a wine. There is also recommending sparkling wine or champagne in English. That's the one and only task that's happening in English. And there is a spirit blind tasting. There is wine blind tasting. You also have to recommend different beverages for a food menu that they give you in that moment. You also have to this year the task, which was the surprise, you have to recognize different aromas from the aroma kit. So for example, you have to recognize like mushroom or saffron or strawberry, which seems easy, but it's quite difficult, mainly when you are stressed. So it's a very complex competition, I have to say. And I was doing a very long preparation for it. Of course, that I didn't study a lot for the theoretical part, thanks to the WSET diploma, because basically in the last 1.5 years, I was studying 10 hours each day. So luckily, that part, it was great. But except this, the decanting, the sparkling wine recommendation, so all the tasks that has got a time limit and that has got a lot of rules how to do it. I was practicing it with previous champions and with my sommelier employees. It took around like 2 months to be fully prepared. And I haven't mentioned all the wine blind tastings and all the spirit blind tasting, which is also very difficult. So yes, that's it.
And how should we imagine maybe the wine life or professional wine life in Budapest? Is it easy to find blind tasting groups and other fellow professionals to prepare yourself for this kind of exam and title?
Honestly, I don't think that there is plenty blind tasting groups, which is not a problem for me, because I like to practice mainly alone or like with one person. So it's a very very closed circle and society. So all of us, all the sommeliers, I mean, we meet each other around like 3 or 5 times every week on different tastings, and everybody has got the opportunity, I think, to practice anything. But special groups, I think only one exists. but I cannot concentrate when there is 10 other people. So I would rather, like sit down with one sommelier, with one coach, and practice it in a private way.
Mm. And in your experience, what are the best methods to improve this skill? Because blind tasting is really like a pivotal part of any sommelier curriculum.
You can practice it until a certain limit, but if you are not talented in this task, you would never be super good in this. So as I have said it at the start, at the beginning, when I started to work as a sommelier 7 years ago, I have realized, and everybody else has realized after a couple of months, that I was super talented in blind tasting. So of course, I did some things to improve my skills. For example, I have stopped using perfume. Of course, I have stopped eating spicy food, drinking like Fanta, Coca-Cola, and all the things like this, because these soft drinks, they can ruin your palate big time. And of course, I have tasted. Oh my gosh! Basically, I have counted it once. In an average year, if I'm not doing preparation for any competition or for any international exam, the average amount of wine that I taste, it's around like 10,000 per year. So it means that at least in the last 7 years, I have tasted more than 70,000 wines.
How do you differentiate these wines? For example, if you taste, I don't know, 15 Brunello de Montalcino,
Mhm.
like how would you differentiate these kind of wines? What are the attributes are you looking for?
In most of the time, I'm not doing the blind tasting with like 15 Brunello. So what I practice in most of the time is to divide the the countries. Bit, so in the countries, the different wine regions, and then terroirs, and then grape varieties. So of course, if you live in Italy, because I have lived and worked in Italy as a sommelier for 1.5 years, and you live in the middle of Tuscany, and you have to taste like Chianti or Brunello like every day, you can you can practice and you can recognize the differences between the different wineries. To recognize the vintages, doesn't matter where the wine is coming from. I'm pretty good in this because because I have tasted a lot of wines, so that's an easy part. But to name the winery, if you have got like 10 or like 15 wines from the same style, it's extremely difficult. And I would be happy if in like 30 years, 30 more years, I would be able to name like all the wineries as well. But with my knowledge at this stage, I'm pretty happy that I can recognize country, wine region, grape, vintage, and method of production. So I think it's more than enough now.
If you want to give maybe, or if you would, maybe some markers or secret tips, how someone who is not naturally talented could improve their blind tasting knowledge. Like, for example, I found it really helpful to identify certain specific aroma compounds, for example, pyrazine or rotondone, or like, for example, acid structures.
Yeah.
Do you have something like this in your mind, which you can give as a tip?
Honestly, this is a question which is, I think, the most difficult. And that's a minute when I have to say that there is, first of all, a difference between um, the the women and between the men, because I remember back in time when we did plenty tastings with the Hungarian sommeliers, and when I was the one and only woman in the room, and there were 10 men, I felt every time aromas that nobody else felt. So to mark aroma compounds, which helps to recognize the wine. Of course, there are some very obvious ties like I don't know, like gooseberry or asparagus for the New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. But I think the best is to taste more and more and more wines and build up your own tasting ideas. Because I'm very sure that, for example, if we would sit with each other now and taste the same wine, we would write down extremely different tasting notes if it comes to aromas. The other things like acidity structure or tannin level or alcohol, these things are not open questions, because you have to study a scale and you have to put all these compounds on the right place of the scale. So of course that, and you know it as well, because you have also studied at the WSET, that they have got a very special system, and you have to calibrate your palate. So my best suggestion it would be, because of course a lot of people ask me about this question, to start tasting wines. Because when you taste a wine at the first occasion, and I have to say for the white wines, the tasting, it's so much easier. But if you start tasting wines in your life, I would say that the first 2,000 wines, if they are red wines, they only have the taste of a red wine. And when you taste more and more, you start finding the aromas, you start finding the difference. So I would say minimum 2,000 wine. After, when you taste 10,000 wines, you have got some ideas. You can recognize the aromas, and maybe you can recognize also the terroir. And after, when you when you have tasted around like 40,000 wines, you realize that you don't know anything about blind tasting. So, so it's difficult, but it's practice, practice, and practice. And of course, you can also improve your skills, not your palate, but your ability on feeling the aromas by the nose, if you start using this aroma kit. So you have to smell all the different things that you can smell. So you have to smell like all the vegetables, all the fruits, every time, all the spices, to have these information in your mind. And then when you will feel the same thing in the wine, you can name it. And it helps a lot for the blind tasting or for tasting. So that's.
Did you also specifically categorize maybe the grape varieties and regions to help your blind tasting skills?
I would say that for me, the blind tasting is like mathematics. So I have got my own system, which starts with the first information if the wine is from the old world or from the new world. So I do not concentrate at the first sight on the grape variety, because it can lead you into very bad consequences. I concentrate on the origin, like if it has got like warm climate character or cold climate. And from these information, I start to pick up the possible countries, after the possible regions. And after, when I get to know what is the region, thanks to my theoretical knowledge, I know the grape varieties that they have in that specific region, and then I can make my final consequences. So I do it like from outside to the inside. Yeah, there are some grapes that, of course, from the first smell or even from the color of the wine, I can name either the grape varieties that I love, either the grape varieties that I hate. So I love Chardonnay. I love Meursault. So of course, I would recognize it in all the situation. But for example, I really, really don't like Pinot Noir. So from the first smell, I get to know that that is a Pinot, for example.
And besides that, what are maybe, in your eyes, what are maybe the most difficult grapes to identify or to confuse with one another?
Previously, like a couple of years ago, I would have said a different thing. But now, the most difficult wines or grapes to recognize, those are not exactly like grapes, but in red wines, the winemaking techniques have changed a lot. So a couple of years ago, it was very easy, for example, to recognize like Rioja, because they had like very classic style. But these days, even the new style Riojas, or like mainly the new style Malbecs from Argentina, makes our life so much more difficult, because it seems that all the winemakers all over the world now, they are pretty much into the lighter and more elegant style of the red wines. So these days, it can happen that you taste a wine which has got pink color and a lot of primary fruity aromas, and you end up with a Malbec from Argentina. So I think this is the most difficult thing, because all the carbonic maceration and semi-carbonic maceration and using of less oak and using less less aging, it makes the blind tasting very difficult. So that's my problem, because for example, now you can easily mix up a very young Shiraz from Australia, like these days from 2019, and like a young Joven Tempranillo from Spain. So that's very difficult. And I didn't have this problem a couple of years ago. So it's all about the different winemaking techniques.
So would you say it's maybe more difficult to find classic examples of certain wine styles?
Classic wine styles, it's easier so to recognize like a Chianti, for example, or like a French Burgundy, or stuff like this. It's easier. So I don't know, for example, when I will start the Master of Wine school in London, where they put all the new wines on the exams. I don't see it now. How will I be able to detect the new wines? But we will see.
So you have a plan to become a master of wine in the future?
Yes, but I think most of the people in the wine industry, they have the plan, and then you will see if you have got real chances or not. So unfortunately, this year my plans have changed a lot thanks to this fantastic virus, because the plan it was to apply for the Master of Wine Institute this year in June and to start it in September. Obviously, this year it will not happen. So I'm a little bit like sad about this fact that I have to wait from now like 1.5 years for starting the course and the process, and then I will do my very best. But I'm counting with minimum like 7 years, if I will be good enough to pass on all the exams, because we can say that Master of Wine is the most difficult title to get it. And in Hungary, we still don't have any Master of Wine. There are certain students who are quite close to that level. Okay, not certain, but 3. And we will see. But yes, that's my biggest plan.
And why do you think it is that Hungary doesn't have any Master of Wines yet, or even Master Sommeliers?
Master sommelier, it's a different story. I never thought that I wanted to be a master sommelier because I'm so much more interested in the theoretical part. So master sommelier, it's a different story. About this, I cannot share like any ideas or any experience because I never had it in my mind. And there are some sommeliers in Hungary who has got the second level, like the certified sommelier from the master sommelier system. But why we don't have a master of wine? I think it's an easier question. First of all, it's very difficult for the Hungarians to write essays, and you can practice it. But in our school system, to write essays, it was never a case. In the British system, where they have got like many Master of Wines, they are so much better in writing essays. So when you have got, for example, an exam at the Master of Wine, it can happen that you have to write up to like 15 exams, 15 essays in some days. It's very, very difficult. Second of all, of course, you have to do it in English. And if English is not your first language, you waste a lot of time on thinking what to write, and you do not have time. So this is also a problem because I think in Hungary, if you would like to study English in the school, you will never be very good in English. This is one problem, and the second problem is that it's super expensive. So if you are not like a millionaire, it's very difficult to do all these years of studying, and you have to practice minimum like 12 or 14 hours every day, and then you cannot work. So you need to have a very strong background or a company which helps you with this, because it takes a lot of money and a lot of effort. So I think in Hungary, most of the companies, they wouldn't support a sommelier or a wine expert to become a master of wine. I luckily have got a different situation because the company where I work, they have got different thoughts about this. So if I would start it, if I would get in the school, they would help me with everything.
Let it be. And if we are talking about Hungary already, just briefly, maybe how and where should the Hungarian wine market improve? Maybe, and how do you see the Hungarian wine market now? Also, maybe the sommelier world.
The Hungarian wine market, it's like a well-kept secret. So it's a problem that our export, it's almost nothing. And from the couple of percentages which goes to the export market, 95% is the sweet wine category from Tokaj, which are gorgeous. But I think these days, most of the people, they would rather drink like the lightest styles of the wines, not the very heavy sweet Asu wines from Tokaj. So I would say that where we can gain a market, it's absolutely the dry wines from Tokaj, mainly the grape variety Furmint. You can also find the dry Furmints outside of Hungary in plenty Michelin Star restaurants all over the world. So in the top fine dining level, you can already find it. But to be honest, the Hungarian wines are not cheap. So compare to Italian wines, or compared to Spanish wines, or compared to Australian wines, it's very difficult, and we cannot produce a high volume. So it can be like a top notch, if you ask me. But yes, the direction, it should be the dry wines, in my personal point of view. So it would be very difficult to promote like a Hungarian Pinot Noir, or to promote like a Hungarian Cabernet Sauvignon. I know that we are quite successful in the Cabernet Franc, which is so different than the original Cabernet Franc from the Val de Loire. This can be also a point. However, not all the vintages are on the same quality level. So for the export market, it's also difficult, because if you make a fantastic wine, and the export market like it, and after you are not able to produce the same wine in the next 3 years, then you don't have the consistency. So it's a difficult question. And that's the same story with the Hungarian bull's blood, which nobody knows at this stage what is it, because you can find bull's blood in the Szekszárd wine region, you can find bull's blood in the Eger wine region. These two things are very different by the method of production, by the regulations as well. And then they change their own rules and regulations in every second year. So sometimes even the winemakers, they don't know what is their wine or what it should be, and it's also impossible to communicate like a bull's blood now on the international market. So yes, definitely, I would say it again, that dry wines, even not just Furmint, but maybe cuvées from Furmint and another autochthone variety from Hárslevelű, and then if the market like these wines, then of course you can put the most expensive and most beautiful sweet wines from Tokaj as well on certain markets.
I also agree with the need for consistency, for sure, also in wine laws and in wine terms, and also to concentrate on dry wines. But I think it would be also very important to emphasize certain indigenous grape varieties and autochthonous grape varieties, for example, Kadarka, but you also mentioned Furmint Hárslevelű already. But I think a lot of consumers and also a lot of guests who I meet in the restaurant, they ask loudly, or they just have this question in their head, that why should I drink a Pinot Noir from Matra if I can drink a Pinot Noir from Burgundy, but the grape variety comes from, actually. And I think, for example, with Grüner Veltliner and Austria, they did a really good marketing, how they can leverage on one grape variety and one specific region or terroir. So which grape varieties would you think, in terms of autochthonous grape varieties, do you think that Hungary would have a future on the export markets?
Well, first of all, we have to name the real indigenous grape varieties, because you have also mentioned Kadarka, which we say it's a Hungarian grape variety, but unfortunately this is not true, because we say, of course, it's Hungarian because we have it here inside the borders for more than 300 years, but originally, and I think, of course, you know it, that it's coming from like Serbia or like some parts of Bulgaria. And with the Kadarka, it's also very difficult that now in Hungary we have got 60,000 hectares as vineyard surfaces, and only 200 hectares is Kadarka. So the Hungarian winemakers, they don't concentrate on it. They prefer to make wines from Kékfrankos, which is still not Hungarian, because that's the same variety as Blaufränkisch. So I would say in red wines, we don't have any chances to promote any indigenous varieties. In white, if we are not talking about Furmint, and if we are not talking about Hárslevelű, I would say maybe kéknyelű from Badacsony, because we have got 22 wine regions, but kéknyelű as a grape, you can only have it in the Badacsony wine region, and only a couple of thousand bottles of kéknyelű is made in every year. So as an interesting variety, it can be also a fantastic idea to have it in the best restaurants outside of Hungary, but there is no volume. So yes, we have to get back to the furmint and to the hash level question, even though that Hungary is not just the one and only country where you find the furmint. So under different names, you can also find it in our neighbor countries. You can also find the furmint, of course, in Austria, and you can find it in Slovenia as well. But I would say from all the grape varieties, furmint and hash levelű, those are the grapes that we can call indigenous varieties, and that we have to promote. And I totally agree with your guest. So I also wouldn't drink a Pinot Noir from Matra. So yes, we have to concentrate on the indigenous varieties, and we have to concentrate maybe on brands. Because, for example, if there is a winery who makes a fantastic furmint and who makes a fantastic hash levelű, not from Tokaj, but from some other wine regions, and if they also have great Cabernet Franc or great Pinot Noir, then you can educate your guests, because if they like the indigenous variety, maybe they are open to taste some other varieties that they know from other countries.
And just maybe going back to your work with this topic, how can you maybe add Hungarian, or which opportunities do you have to add Hungarian wines on your wine list?
Here in Hungary, or in the restaurants that we have in Malta?
All over, because now you are the executive head sommelier, right, in 6 restaurants.
Yes.
But the restaurant is owned by a Maltese group,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So do you have also opportunities to put Hungarian wines on foreign markets like this?
Well, I'm very, very lucky with my boss, with the owner of the company. 3 years ago, when I started to work for Caviar&Bull, I got the 100% free hands. So basically, I can make all the wine list and all the beverage list in the way that I would like to, or in the way that I think they can work. So in Hungary, we have got 2 restaurants now, and on the wine list, of course, 70% of the wines, those are Hungarian wines. With Malta, the situation is so much more difficult, because they are very close to Italy. So we can get to Malta all the Italian wines that the Maltese people love to drink at very cheap price points. So in Malta, we have got on all the wine lists like 1, 2 sweet wines from Tokaj and dry furmint, but except these, I cannot put, and that's because of economical reasons. So as I have said it before, the problem is that the Hungarian wines, they are too expensive. They are not very competitive now on the international market. Because just to give you, for example, like a hint of information, and it's not going to be an Italian example, but it's going to be a Spanish example. In Malta, I collect a lot of Spanish wines as well for all the lists, and I'm able to buy, for example, a fantastic Monastrell for like €6, which is full-bodied and juicy, and the people love it. You know the Hungarian market, so You know it when I say that it would be absolutely difficult to find like a great, not a good, but a great red wine for €6.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that even I would like to promote more and more Hungarian wines, but
It's
at
hard
this
to get a good
stage,
margin. Yeah.
yes, you cannot have a good margin now. Hopefully, this situation will change, and we will not stop with 6 restaurants. Of course, now it's difficult because for this year, for 2020, the plan it was that we would open 2 more restaurants in the group, one more in Malta and one more in Budapest, and there are further plans with the group to open Caviar&Bull in Russia, in Dubai as well. But you know, now the situation is a little bit more difficult. So I would be the happiest to say that in the next 3 years we will have more and more countries in our group, and I would have the opportunity to promote more and more Hungarian wines. But I think our plans will happen, but a little bit later than we desired it.
And maybe what are your favorite wine regions or favorite wine styles, rather?
Oh, I have got very interesting taste if it comes to my personal taste. Of course, I do not write my wine lists for my taste, because then it would be very interesting. So if it comes to white wines, I'm a really big fan of the dry ferments from Tokai. So in my free time, mainly during this period, in this quarantine um, life, I have realized that in the last 3 weeks, 90% of the wines that I drank, those were dry ferments. So now I'm more than sure that from Hungary, my favorite wine style is ferment from Tokai. If we go outside of Hungary, as I have said, I'm a super big fan of the great French Chardonnays from Meursault appellation, and uh, and I have got my personal favorite, which is very difficult to find, even if you are a sommelier, and that's from the northern part of Spain, from Bilbao, and it has got the name Chacoli. It's from a very small area, and from a grape variety that's called Hondara Bizui. So I have at home a lot of bottles from one winery, but it's very difficult to find it. It has got super high acidity and it's extremely elegant, and somehow you can find some CO2 in it without adding to the wine. So it's great for the summertime. But if it comes to red wines, my taste is the opposite. So in white wines, I love the elegance, the super high acidity, and the dryness. But in red wines, I think thanks to my early wine tasting experiences, it's absolutely new word. So I love the great Cabernets from California. And if I have to name like a special country, it would be Lebanon. So the red wines from Lebanon, which are in 95%, those are cuvées with Cabernet Sauvignon, Cinsault, and maybe some Carignan or Syrah. Those are the perfect wines. Full-bodied, absolutely well-matured, with somehow a little bit higher alcohol by volume than the European wines. But those wines I love. So in red wines, I'm super obsessed with the full-bodied and deep and dark wines.
And in the new world, or old new world maybe, do you prefer some terroirs as maybe new upper common ones, for example, Georgia or Israel?
Israel, yes, Israel. I would say I love it, um, and I don't have preferences on the grape varieties. So from my experiences, I would say that I can love a Chardonnay from Israel, such like from the Golan Heights, but I also enjoy the Shiraz over there. So yes, Israel is a great country to pick it. If it would be like a specific terroir, I would go into Napa Valley, to the Hall Mountain. It's a little bit different than the rest of Napa, because most of the time you end up with too jammy and slightly sweet red wines. But Hall Mountain, from the name, it's a mountain, and up on the mountain you can find super elegant but deep and well-matured Cabernet Sauvignons. So from terroir perspective, that one I love so much. And well, yes, if it comes to Australia, McLarenville and of course Barossa, those are my favorite regions. And even if it's very terroir specific, from Australia, Coonawarra as well.
And just maybe going back to your preferences, what do you look for in a great wine, or what do you think defines a great wine?
I think this is an easy question, because I can easily name what I do not appreciate in a wine, and it's mainly when we are talking about red wines. I really don't like the red wines with unnaturally high acidity level and with green aromas. So that's a problem with many wines. For example, from Hungary, that the red wines, they every time they carry this green paprika note. So when I would like to select a great wine, first of all, I would like to have it like matured and ready. And it's very difficult to find these wines, because I'm pretty much into the harmony. So it has to be well matured. The oak, it has to be integrated. The acidity, it has to be there, but not lower and not upper than the desired level. So it's all about the harmony. But I think everybody, all the sommeliers, they are looking for the harmony. So that's my perspective, and yeah, that's it. Basically, with the white wines, we are so much luckier. So I would say you can find like 10 times more great white wines than great red wines.
And if you want to put a new wine on your list, do you also look at maybe the producer profile, or how well the terroir or the story of the winemaker could sell at the table?
Not really. I know that the story is important, but I would rather have a great wine with a poor story than to have a great story with a poor wine. So in my mind, the wine should speak. So all the wines that I put on the wine list, on all the wine lists that I take care of, those are the wines that I would happily drink in my free time. So it means for me, the quality is extremely important. Of course, if you can share a great story at the table, and if the guests are interested in some stories, we can have conversations like this, but I'm quality minded.
I also wanted to talk about stories, because I think these days a new generation of sommeliers kind of growing up and coming into the restaurant industry. And also on social media, you could see a lot of almost influencers among sommeliers, also mostly on international levels. What do you think of maybe of the importance and yeah, power of sommeliers on social media now?
The power of the social media is extremely big. So I cannot say that this is not important. And yes, they have got big influence on the taste of the people. So in Hungary, we don't really have plenty wine influencers. So basically, in the wine industry, the well-known sommeliers, we can give like a hint from our knowledge and from our taste to educate the people. I think this question is more important these days if we are not talking about Hungary, but about the rest of the world. And on one side, I support this because to educate the new generation and just make them drinking good wines and not cheap cocktails or not low quality other products. This is a good influence, but they have to have the knowledge and they have to have the taste to educate the people, because this is a responsibility. And I think the best example of this question is the natural wine question. So many people now all over the world, and I don't want to hurt anybody's feeling, they are drinking the natural wines because there is a big hype on the social media or influence made by the influencers, basically. But if you would ask 10 very professional sommeliers about this, they wouldn't promote those wines in most of the cases or in most of the times. So, for example, I think the natural wine hype is absolutely thanks to the social media and thanks to the influencers. Because I would never say it that somebody who only, I don't know, drink wines occasionally, like once a week, a natural wine or an orange wine would be their first choice without any social media background, if you understand what I mean.
Why do you think it is?
I have no answer. I have no answer for this question because I'm not an influencer, and I know my wines and I know what I would like to drink or how I would like to educate my own guests. But most probably there is a craving every time for the new products. So the new, it's interesting. Interesting is cool. We would like to be cool. So I think maybe that can be like a circle with this question. So if you remember, before there was a huge hype for the rosé wines. There is still a hype for the Sauvignon Blanc because everybody drinks Sauvignon Blanc. So the people they don't want to take the risk, so they drink what everybody else drink, what is posh, what is fashion. So I believe that's how it is happening.
So you wouldn't say that the natural wine is coming back, so to say, or it's there to stay in the future?
It will not stay, definitely. It's a fashion, and afterward there is going to be another fashion. Natural wine, it's great for the people who believe that, for example, wines without sulfur, it it's great for their body and is healthier. But 2 years ago it was different, and maybe 5 years later it's going to be different. So I think natural wines and orange wines, they were invented for the Nordic cuisine, because for the Nordic cuisine these wines can fit so well, and it's a big and valuable market, like Sweden, Norway, Denmark. So that part I understand it. But if there is going to be like something else, and when these people will taste, okay, like name a new fashion, I don't know, maybe the new fashion is going to be the dry furmint, okay? So when they will taste a good wine, which is stable and clear and clean, without any strange notes, the people will taste it and they will love it. So maybe they will leave behind the wines which are a little bit like stranger. Because I don't say that those wines are bad, because I have tasted plenty good ones as well. But to use the phrase strange, I think that's correct.
And just to talk about wine pairings, maybe, because you already mentioned pairing with the Scandinavian cuisine. Do you have any like favorite food wine pairings, or maybe strange ones?
Our restaurants, they are based on the Mediterranean cuisine, so it's absolutely not partner in crime for the orange wine. So we have got a lot of lobster courses and like prawns and fresh ingredients. And I would say that the happiest combination ever for the lobsters and for the family of the lobster, it's to pair it with an elegant Chardonnay. So if you ask me what I think the very best wine and food pairing, is definitely like a great Chablis or Meursault, or even an elegant Hungarian Chardonnay with the lobster. So I think this is magical, and from 100 people, 100 loves it. So I found this extremely successful wine and food pairing. But I don't have, like these classical wine and food pairings in my mind. So I would never give, for example, for a rosé duck breast, a Pinot Noir. I know it works, of course, but you have to be a bit like more creative or more innovative. So I'm not... I'm not obsessed with the classical things, and even I'm very open-minded if it comes to the color. So at plenty times it happens that I serve a fuller-bodied white wine to a meat dish, not a full-bodied red wine. So there is a lot of opportunity if it comes to wine and food pairing, and you have to use your own creativity for it. And I like to call myself very innovative in this field, and the feedbacks are quite good. So.
And what are maybe the biggest misconceptions about food wine pairings? For example, you cannot drink red wine with fish or something like this.
You know what? We are not in 1982. So a couple of years ago, there were very strict rules about this question. I wouldn't say you cannot drink red wine for a fish, mainly because the 21st century, it's not about giving a wine for the meat item or for the fish. So the surrounding elements, the sauces, the vegetables, the purees, in most of the time they are more important than the meat or than the fish. So I think the strongest aroma on the plate, that's the leading aroma. So why you cannot drink, for example, for I don't know, for a white fish, if it has got tomatoes and some lighter red sauce on the side, why you cannot drink like a lighter Chianti or why you cannot drink a Pinot Noir. So I think you have to concentrate on the taste of the food, not on the knowledge that you have already have in your mind.
Just maybe talk about the situation after the corona outbreak. What are your plans maybe for the future besides mastering your Spanish?
I really hope that the coronavirus is not going to be as long to master my Spanish, unless it would mean that during the whole year I have to stay at home and drinking wine and study Spanish. But thank you for the question, and thank you for this funny moment. Now my day is so much better. So yes, I have got some plans, because I have it in my mind for some years that I would like to have my own company. I was just waiting for getting my WSET diploma to have the extended theoretical knowledge and the knowledge on all the wine business as well. And I was also waiting for the Hungarian Sommelier Champion title to make it sure that I know what I am talking about. So now this is the period when I'm building up my own company. The original plan, it was to work with all the different Hungarian restaurants and bars and take care of their beverage list and wine list, and makes it how to say it, like economically friendly. So to have better wines and drinks and to earn more money for the different places. Now the situation is a little bit different, because the idea it still stands, and this is still the concept what I am going to do after the virus. But we cannot forget about one thing, that when the restaurants will be able to reopen, they will have a lot of difficulties with starting. So my concept now is going to be the fact that there are going to be a lot of restaurants where there is not going to be a sommelier or a person who knows anything about wines or spirits, because the sommeliers are pretty expensive, and I think after the virus it's going to be more difficult for the restaurants and for the bars to have sommelier. So I will try to help them how to have a stock which is optimal for that situation and which fits to their own profile. And I will make contracts with them to not just make the wine list and the beverage list, but even keeping trainings, educating the staff, and promoting my partners in the social media. So I think after this virus is going to be very, very important case for the places to have an advisor or to have a wine expert who can help them to at least make their profit a little bit bigger. Because I think the restaurants will be in a very difficult situation, and they would definitely need help and need a professional who can help to accommodate their needs and the customers' needs as well.
Well, really good luck with that, and I think a lot of people will need your services. So thank you very much for your time, Victoria. Thanks for taking the time, and the best of luck. Have a nice day.
Thank you very much, Matti, and the best of luck. And we hope that very soon we can change the online tastings into real tastings. And have a great day. And hopefully next time when we speak, we will have better conditions.
Yeah, and a glass of wine on the side.
And a glass of wine.
Let it be. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.